Hello, and thank you for tuning into this video. I am the plant-based pâtissier, and today we are making some vegan lemon poppy seed muffins. When I make muffins, I like to get everything set up right away, so I'm putting in our muffin liners before I do everything and preheating our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. These will be coming with me to a coffee social event that my high rise apartment does, so the liners help keep them contained. Muffin liners can be a bit tricky to remove. I often have trouble with the double papers coming out. I did correct this, it's just not in this clip. Next, we are going to be pouring out 1 cup of soy milk. I put my face about level with my liquid measuring cup just to make sure my measurements are accurate. I do often measure inaccurately, but with a liquid measuring cup, it is pretty easy to do it the right way, so that's what we're doing. I am now gathering the ingredients that we'll be using for this next step, the soy milk that we just poured, and are now pouring into this separate bowl, and some apple cider vinegar. I do not like working with apple cider vinegar. I find it smells foul, and if my face was in this video, you would see me cringe as I opened that bottle of it. However, it is important for this recipe. You may even see the reaction begin to occur as I pour it into this bowl with our soy milk. This interaction is crucial for the recipe. It does curdle the soy milk a bit. And we'll give that just a quick stir to promote curdling and let it sit for about 10 minutes like that. Now comes one of my favorite parts of baking with lemons. We're grabbing our microplane and we are zesting these lemons. Zesting really lets the smell and the flavor of the lemon come out. It makes my kitchen smell absolutely wonderful for a bit. Smell is something rather personal to me. When I had COVID in 2020, I used to work in a hospital then. I lost my sense of smell for a long, long time. For 4 years, much longer than most people have. And one of the few things I could smell a little bit was lemons, and that's how I started baking with lemons a lot. Thankfully, much of my sense of smell has returned after I started doing a scent retraining therapy, which is a type of therapy in which you attempt to smell some essential oils every day for quite a while. It took me a couple months to start seeing results, but I have noticed I can now smell things like cookies baking in the oven, like vanilla extract, like the rain, and the beautiful smell of lemons just feels that much stronger, and I fall more in love with lemons every day. You may notice me turning over the lemons. I am just looking at them to make sure I'm not getting any of the pith. The pith is white, and it is not good. It's kind of gross and very bitter, much more than the actual lemon itself, and you really don't want to get that into the bowl. This recipe calls for the zest of 2 lemons, so yes, you're going to be watching me zest some lemons for quite a bit. And even after I finish zesting the second one that I just picked up a couple moments ago, we're not quite done with the lemons, because this recipe also calls for a bit of lemon juice. So I guess I'll just skip right to that part. You already know what this looks like. Here's all of our zest. Now let's just get to the juicing. To juice our lemons, we are first going to take our palm and kind of roll these lemons out on the cutting board. Before we slice the lemon in half, this helps break up some of the membranes in the lemons so that it's easier to get the juice out. It actually works super well, and I highly recommend doing this before you juice your citrus fruits. Now, most people are going to use a juicer in this scenario. Believe it or not, I don't have one. So I am just going to squeeze the lemon really hard with my hands. Hey, if it works, it works. I also do this with limes, especially when I'm making tacos. You gotta squeeze a little bit of lime over it. And doing the rolling motion before you just grip it like the Hulk actually makes it really easy. So, first lemon down, same scenario with the second one. We roll it, roll it, roll it, roll it with our palm, and then we cut it in half, and we just grip that lemon. You may notice a couple seeds fall into the bowl. Yes, this is expected when you're just squeezing a lemon with your hands like this. However, it's not a big deal. I just use a pasta strainer and pour the juice into another bowl to strain the seeds out. I did not film this, but that is what I did. I will also be saving these lemons for later because there is still a bit of juice in them, believe it or not. And when I make my glaze, I'm going to mismeasure and need to go back and squeeze my lemon scraps further. After that, however, they will be going in the compost. First, we will be putting our wet ingredients in the bowl, so I'm going to grab 2/3 cups of sugar. This often confuses people, but sugar is considered a wet ingredient. This is due to a couple reasons, most notably the way it dissolves in other liquids. It doesn't really help give desserts any kind of solid structure, unlike flour. Next is a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Remember, this is technically 2 half teaspoons of vanilla extract. This recipe actually does not call for butter, so we're not using a butter or a vegan butter or a margarine. We are just using a fourth cup plus a tablespoon of a vegetable oil. Just a quick note, oil and butter are not always great substitutes for each other. This recipe calls for oil, so that's what I'm using. If you try to sub one or the other, there may be textural issues, so it's worth a shot. Now we just dump our lemon zest right in that bowl. Before we just go ahead and dump the lemon juice in the bowl, I was going to save some to make a lemon glaze. I didn't save enough. I grabbed the wrong measuring spoon. I meant to grab a tablespoon, but I did not. Oh well, I still had the lemon scraps, so I still had juice to work with, and we just dumped the rest of the juice in the bowl into the big bowl. Now we just grab our whisk and stir our wet ingredients all together. You may be wondering about the soy milk. Don't worry, we're going to get there in just a second. Literally, we're getting there right now. So, yes, I spilled a bit, no big deal. We're going to gradually pour the soy milk in as we whisk continuously. You may notice some gross curdled pieces in there. That is supposed to happen. That was the point of the apple cider vinegar. Yes, it looks gross. It does not smell the best either, but it'll be delicious when it's all baked together, so don't worry about it. It's now time to add in our dry ingredients, and we will start with 2 cups of King Arthur flour. This is my favorite flour, and they also have really good recipes, including vegan ones, on their website, so go check it out. I got my vegan egg wash recipe from King Arthur, in fact. Next is our baking soda, and it is 2.5 teaspoons. So, yes, it's going to look like I'm putting a lot in. I counted, I promise, it is 2.5 teaspoons. I like to use the little cardboard flaps to help me kind of even out my measurements in the spoons, so I turned the box around just so it was a bit easier for me to do that. Next is a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and the tub of it actually has a helpful little metal scrapey thing to make this easier for me. Don't confuse your baking soda and baking powder. Very common mistake, they're not the same. Next is some salt, which I will be measuring with my sole. I always add salt to my baked goods. And of course, they would not be lemon poppy seed muffins without the poppy seeds. We're going to measure 3 tablespoons of these. For anything that involves flavor, it is actually safe to do a little extra, so some of my tablespoons may be a bit big. And now all of our ingredients for the muffin themselves are together, so we're just going to whisk to combine. I don't use a mixer for this recipe, it's not necessary. We don't want to overmix because that can lead to a rather dense muffin. We just want to make sure everything is incorporated and it forms a nice batter. Doesn't that just look absolutely delicious? I think it does, and it smells pretty good too. And I tasted some before I put it in the oven after I was done mixing, so no germs in there, and it tasted great. Now we just have to put that batter into our cupcake liners. I like to use an ice cream scoop for this. It gets pretty even amounts, although you will see some have more, some have less. You can correct this with a spoon later on, and that is exactly what I will be doing. But I love using my ice cream scoop as a starting point. I actually use it way more for portioning things while baking than I do ice cream. I'm not much of an ice cream person. The liners may shift a little bit in your pan as you're doing this. It's fine, you can just straighten it out as is. Oftentimes, it'll bake even anyways while it's in the oven, so not a huge deal. This recipe, when it is followed exactly like this, makes about 12 muffins. So you won't find yourself having an awkward amount of batter at the end. Although I will say you'll probably be scraping a bowl, especially if you're like me and you're a little heavy handed with your muffin scoops. I honestly just go on pure vibes based on how full they are, and I try to get everything even, and usually it works out pretty well in the end, I would say. These aren't all perfect, and I do go in with a spoon to do some corrections later, but that's not something you need to see. These look pretty good, so let's throw them in the oven for 18 to 20 minutes. To make a glaze, we need about 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and half a cup of powdered sugar. The amount of juice to glaze ratio is going to depend on how thin or thick you want the glaze. As you can see, this is not even forming a glaze because it's just a bit too thick. So we get to grab the lemon scraps. Really glad I saved those instead of just throwing them right in the compost, but you never know what you might need. As you can see, these still have some juice in them, so we are back in business. Otherwise, I would have had to cut open an entire other lemon for what is a completely small amount of juice compared to what a lemon holds. By the way, doing this is how I discovered I still had a tiny cut on my finger, so that was not fun. Also, my camera ran out of storage space about right when I actually started making the glaze, so you can't see that. You will see me glaze the muffins, though. My bad, I am not remaking a glaze for editing purposes. Just pretend it looks nice. Muffins are out of the oven, and we'll wait a couple minutes and then add our glaze, so they're still a bit warm. See, I told you I made an actual glaze, so we're going to put it on the muffins. You may not have seen the process, but you can see about the thickness. What I like to do when I glaze things is put them on a cooling rack, and underneath that cooling rack, I put parchment paper. So the parchment catches any extra glaze, and I don't have to go clean my counters after this. Saves a lot of time, and, well, the parchment is scrap from other things I've baked, so it was going to get thrown out anyways. I also realized during the recording of my voiceover for this that you can hear my cat meowing in the background. Honestly, it was around his dinner time, so he was very upset with me that I was not giving him his food and was glazing cupcakes instead. I did feed him after this. Be assured that he ate. I do have a cat, and even though I do have him, he surprisingly doesn't really care about jumping on the counters. And before I bake anything, I wipe down every single surface just to make sure there's no cat hair in any food. I've never really had an issue with this, so just keep your kitchen clean if you have pets to Avoid the dreaded hair in the food situation. It can be avoided with just a bit of cleaning, though you also want to keep your cats off the counter while you're baking. Mine just doesn't care enough, but I know some will probably want to smell your delicious desserts. I thought these muffins still needed just a little something extra to make them pretty, so I grabbed another lemon I had and decided to just put a bit of zest over them, just to add a little more lemon flavor and just a bit of decor. I will be using this lemon later. I go through quite a bit of lemons because I use them in my regular cooking. I'm also on a fitness journey, and I prefer to use something called a clear protein that kind of dissolves in water and makes it liquidy. Mine has a bit of a weird aftertaste to it, so I typically will just put a squeeze of lemon juice in my big old gallon jug I take to the gym. It's not actually quite a gallon, but it's surprisingly close to one. So that's how I use a lot of my lemons, is just making my workout drink taste better, really. And here we have them, vegan lemon poppy seed muffins. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something about baking, and maybe you'll try this recipe too.